We're from the Turrbal and Yagara people's land in Brisbane. And so I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that we're all meeting on today and pay my respects to elders past and present, and acknowledge that these lands have always been places of research, teaching and learning. So my name is Ruth Knight, and I'm from QUT, the Centre of Philanthropy and Nonprofit Studies, and it is a pleasure to have you all for tea and buns this morning. So good to have you all, and I would just like to know who has never been to tea and buns before. Could you put a 1 in the chat if this is your first time to tea and buns? Let's see who's here for the first time. Lots of people, yay! Oh my goodness, welcome everybody. Tea and Buns is a community of practice. We've been going about over 2 years now, and I try and sort of do tea and buns nearly every month. And every month we just have a different topic of conversation, and we discuss something that's going on in the sector, or something we want to learn about, or maybe some research that's been going on, or just something that we want to discuss as leaders and practitioners in the nonprofit or social enterprise sector. And one thing that has been talked about a lot recently is AI and ChatGPT. So I said to Harriet, you know what, we really need a tea and buns on this. So it is absolutely brilliant to have you all. Who has been to a tea and buns before? Maybe put a 2 in the chat if this is not your first time, so we can see who's coming back, because that's a great indication that you love these tea and buns. That's more than 2. Thanks, Sam. Yay! We do record all of these sessions and we put them up afterwards on the ACPNS website. So if you want to have a listen to some of our previous tea and buns, there's so many different topics. Please go check out the previous recordings and share them with your team. I thought we would probably just ask a very simple question just to find out what your level of knowledge or experience is. And the question is, have you used ChatGPT for grant writing yet? So can you pop in the chat for me, have you used ChatGPT before? Are you complete beginners, or have you used it a lot? All right, let's see. A few no's, couple of yeses, a little, had one go. Total dinosaur mark. That's all right. I'm a baby dinosaur, so I'm just getting there for a few other things, but not grant writing. Okay, let's ask that then. Have you used it for anything else? Have you used it? I've used it for recipes. I've used it for ideas for a blog post. I've used it for some LinkedIn posts. Now you're going to look at all of my LinkedIn posts, aren't you? And going to say, who helped her write those wonderful LinkedIn posts? Had a little play. Kids' homework, yes. All right, there are lots of different reasons why people may have used it or played with it. Oh, Myles is very good at writing poems with ChatGPT. So yes, you'll have to hear one of Myles's poems. In fact, he told me that from him doing it, I actually have created a few poems as well, because Myles just gave me such a great idea of writing poems. Okay, and for reports, excellent. Okay, there you go. So now we're giving lots of people reasons to go and have a play with ChatGPT. All right, but today we're talking about grant writing. And I thought that I would ask along Harriet from Strategic Grants. And so Strategic Grants is a very well-known, many of you may know Strategic Grants already. They're a very well-known organisation that helps organisations with grant writing. So they are very expert in this field. They have a long history of working with nonprofit organisations to not only find grants, but apply for grants. And we have a great association with them because they help us here in many different ways, Harriet. In many different ways you work with the Australian Centre of Philanthropy and Nonprofit Studies. So thank you so much, Harriet, for joining us today.
Thank you.
And giving us some of your insights. Do you want to just introduce yourself really briefly? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yep. So hi everyone. As Ruth said, I'm currently with Strategic Grants, and this is kind of my second iteration with Strategic Grants. I was a grant specialist with SG for 8 years, and I have also worked in the charity space. So most recently, I've spent nearly 5 years at the Leukemia Foundation in communications. And I'm back with Strategic Grants at the moment as their comms and marketing strategist. So I've been using ChatGPT for all sorts of things. The purist, I went into comms because I love writing. So the purist in me sometimes gets angry at ChatGPT, but I have a love-hate relationship with it. So I'll be interested to hear everyone's opinions on it. And I guess I'll preface the entire chat with I look at it as a co-pilot, not my creator. So that's kind of the lens that I'm using. So
Right.
yeah.
All right, well, let's get into it and find out how ChatGPT can be helpful. So we are also introducing ChatGPT today. They or it, I don't know what it's called, whether it's what its pronoun is, but let's call it an it then, is joining us today and hopefully is sitting on your desktop right now. And I thought that maybe we could ask it to introduce itself. Okay, in a second, I will tell you what the prompt is to use. But I do want to just start by saying, for those of you who are real like newbies to this, ChatGPT is just another, because there are many, it is just another AI tool, an artificial intelligence tool. So put a 1 in the chat if you have ever used Google, if you've ever done a Google search, or if you have ever used Facebook. Put a 1 in the chat. Okay. So it is highly likely, because you're all saying yes, you've either used Google or Facebook or a chat bot. Put a number 2 in the chat if you have ever used a chat bot when you go onto a website and use a chat box. Okay, lots of people have done chat boxes as well, right? They are AI, artificial intelligence. It's not real people. It's literally a machine. And you are talking to a machine when you are Googling, when you are using Facebook, when you are doing all those things. They use AI. So ChatGPT is just another tool that uses AI, that uses artificial intelligence or machine learning. There's lots of different names, and I'm not going to get too technical about this at all because I'm not technical. But really, that's all it is. So you don't need to be afraid of it. If you like Google and you're comfortable with Google, then maybe this is just another tool for you, as they say, another tool in the toolbox. All right. But there obviously is a lot of conversation about this particular AI tool because so many people are using it and because it is quite sophisticated. In fact, I had a little look and they said about 100 million users are using it every month. So many people are using it. And the ChatGPT that you've got open probably is Chat number 3, which is the free tool, but you can go now and pay for more advanced versions, and there will continue to be more advanced versions. But if you've got the free one open, what I want you to do is put in the first prompt, which Jill is going to put in the chat for me. And I want you to put in, tell me, so just copy what Jill has put in the chat. Tell me in a few bullet points, what is ChatGPT, the history and the problem it solves? Can you all put the prompt into chat for me and tell me what you get? Somebody could come off. Well, no, actually, no, don't actually. This is too much. But I just want to show you how it answers you. Easy. Oh, easy. It was easy to ask them a question. Fantastic. All right. So, but what's the answer like with the correct prompts? Yeah, we're going to get that. Catherine. So the answer that you've been given, is it easy to understand and read in 1 minute? Oh, some of you are fast readers. Yeah, it's not that easy to read. I thought the answer was quite long and quite technical when I put that prompt in. And so what I want you to do now is put in another prompt. And the next one is, oops, see if I can get there. Write in, say it in less words. And see what comes up then. Say it in less words. Yes, thank you, Myles. It actually did start as a non-profit organisation. Yes, the history of this. Maybe it's more of a, I don't know. I don't want to say it's a social enterprise, really, unless it's doing some good work. But thanks, Myles. Myles has put in about the history of it. So if it's giving you too technical answers, like the answer is too technical for you, you can put in a prompt like say it in less words, or say it in fewer words, or try again. You can say, I didn't understand that. Could you say it in more simpler language? So you can tell it. Yes, Michelle has said you can say it in 100 words. Perhaps put that in, folks, or say it sarcastically. Yes, say it sarcastically.
I just saw a question there. Can you ask it to write in certain number of words or characters? And yes, you absolutely can. And it's really good to, and I think sort of where you're going with this, Ruth, is the context that you give in your prompt. It will save you so much time if you can write a really great prompt with context. I read the other day that you can put in your prompt, you can put in up to 3,000 words in your prompt. So, you know, don't be afraid of really explaining who you are, what you want, how you want the information, the number of words, whether you want some subheads, some dot points, and really set the scene for ChatGPT to generate the best possible response for you.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And I think in my experience, again, it is the power of the prompt, really, that if you put in a good prompt, and a quite a specific prompt, it's going to give you a much better answer for what you need. Whereas if your prompt is really broad or really, you know, it's not very specific, it's trying to tell you what it thinks you want to hear. Now, what is the, Harriet, tell me, what is the possible concern with that, the fact that it's just trying to tell you what it wants you to hear?
I guess the concern with that is bias, you know, that may come through. It's also if you don't give it a style and a tone, then, you know, you're not going to get it back in the version that you want. There's also, you know, there's accuracy concerns if it's telling you what you want to hear. The thing is, the way that it works is it's a scraper. So it's scraping information from, just like Google does, as Ruth said, but it's giving it to you in prose, you know, rather than sort of a list of possible websites for you to look at. So it can only scrape what's there. And you know, it's not a writer that writes with feeling and emotion. And I think that's one of the biggest things with grant responses. You can tell when there's passion and dedication behind a grant application that's been written by someone who really knows their projects well, knows their organizations well, has spoken to the people on the front line who are going to be executing this project. All of that, you know, you can absolutely tell the difference between that and a ChatGPT response. And this is my high horse. I will die on this hill, Ruth. That, if you don't know your projects well, with that information that you can input into ChatGPT, you're not going to get back the information that you need. I was just going to add one thing. We talk about at SG writing your grants as if you're writing to an intelligent 11-year-old. And that's the level that you need to pitch. And you can ask ChatGPT to say, explain this project to me as if I'm an intelligent 11-year-old, and you'll start to get some bits and pieces that you perhaps could put into your project overview. And again, you can say, explain this to me as if I'm an intelligent 11-year-old in 200 words. Please use subheads and dot points. You can continue to sort of manufacture that prompt. I keep reading, it's called prompt engineering. So, you can keep shaping that prompt and until you get what you need from it.
Yeah. Both Heather and Myles have made a really good point here that in actual fact, the free version 3 that you're probably using only has the ability to know what was written up to September 2021. It is not taking live data like Google might be, which is it's actually looking at what's coming on the net all the time. This is taking information that it's got from the net previous to 2021. So anything later than that, it may not come up or help you at all. So we have to be really careful that it's not, we're not expecting it to spit out information that may have just been very recent, unless you are giving it the recent information. We'll talk about that in a second. Just hold that thought, okay? Because we'll come back to what if you want to give it information, okay? But Harriet, I want everybody to do another prompt, okay? And this is the next prompt, which is, maybe you can put that, can you help me write grant applications? Can you all put that in there? Can you help me write grant applications? And see what it tells you. Thank you. Put that in as a prompt and see what it actually tells you and see if it says anything similar to what Harriet just said. Does it agree with Harriet? Can you write grant applications? Because I think it actually is going to be fairly honest with you. When I put this prompt in, I think that it did actually tell you some of the things that you need to be aware of. Can anybody sort of put what you just learned from it? Provides the structure. Okay. Is Harriet ChatGPT? Oh, do we all get the same response? Well, I don't know. I don't think so. No. Because it could depend on what it's trying to tell you at any time. And in fact, it might not even be telling you the truth. And that is also something we're going to discuss in a second, that what it's telling you, oh, there you go. We can see if it's giving you, if you put in what it gives you, then we can actually see if you're getting the same thing. Oh, a bit different. It learns from previous prompts as well. Yes, okay. So we've got, it's similar, but a bit different. So it is learning all the time. It is in training. And it is in training because it is looking at what people are prompting it for, but it's learning about what you like. So if you don't like its answer, you can actually tell it that isn't true. Or you can tell it, give me another example or explain that again. So it is in training. It is like an assistant that is learning what you want and what information you're looking for. So we're training it right now by putting these prompts in. And if you say, I like the answer, and it actually, I think, asks you, did you like the answer? You can put a little tick, or you can say, no, that's not true. That's incorrect. Vicky says, I always say thank you. Yeah, put in thank you and see what it says back to you.
I love that, Vicky. I've got a friend who says we have to say please and thank you because when the robots come and take us all over, it'll remember the ones that were polite. And now I'm terrified not to be polite with it.
Yeah. Okay, so we're getting some great answers maybe from it. Right, Jim has put, I really like the last one. It says, remember to tailor your application to the specific guidelines provided by the grant organisation. So it's telling you and reminding you, don't just copy and paste, folks, because this is one of the major concerns for grant writers and also grant makers, is that they don't want just a whole lot of generic grant applications. It is not suitable for that. You have to obviously always think about what is the grant that I'm applying for? You know, what does the grant maker want to know? What are the guidelines? You know, what about my organisation can I tell it about? So again, this is definitely not something that you can just copy and paste. It is about taking what it is giving you as ideas and maybe helping you or reminding you to do certain things. What do you think, Harriet?
Yeah, absolutely, Ruth. And I think that, you know, as everyone on this call would know, that sometimes you're facing a blank page for a grant submission. Sometimes you're facing a form. So, you know, those blank page ones can be really hard. And I think it was Jim, you said that it provides that, you know, what we just did gives you a structure. And yes, for that, you know, that it gives you those sort of subheads and it's a starting point. So that, you know, for that, it can be really useful. I think one of the things that often tricks people up on grant applications is evaluation. And, you know, how will you actually demonstrate? If we give you this money and we trust you with this $10,000, $20,000, how will you come back to us and demonstrate impact? And you could put that into GPT and say, how would I analyze, you know, the outcomes of this camp for children who've been through blood cancer, for instance. And it will generate you a few ideas, which again is a starting point, but you have to be able to do those. You have to be able to implement those techniques. So if ChatGPT suggests, oh, you know, you could have someone observing the child through the whole 3 days of the camp, and then, you know, you could do follow-up interviews with every parent, in whatever it suggests, you obviously have to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, it's taking what ChatGPT suggests and really applying it to, well, how does that fit within my organization's capability and capacity? Is that actually reflective of what our project is all about? All those things. I guess the other hill that I die on, Ruth, is that we work on the 80-20 rule with grants, and 20% is your application. And anyone who's ever heard us bang on about best practice in grant strategy knows that, you know, there's a lot that goes into getting your application across the line. 20% of it is writing a good application. So, you know. Yeah.
No, fantastic. I while everybody's doing the next prompt, I'm going to just talk about what Myles has just put, because he's actually given a very good prompt there by telling the chat, you know, who you are. So acting as, so you could say acting as a grant writer, or acting as a CEO, or acting as a member of the Smith family. So I put up here another prompt for you to put in, and I chose the Smith family because it's an old organization, so lots of information up on the net about it. And so I just want you to put that prompt in while we just, and Fiona, I can see your question about IP. We're going to come to that in just a second about what happens when you put in information. But right now, we know that Smith Family is a typical organisation that has a lot of information up on the net and a lot of information out there, you know, for people to access. So we are presuming that if we ask Chat something about the Smith family, then it's going to be able to give us an answer. So pop that in for me and see what it tells you. Do you think if you were the Smith family, for instance, do you think it would give you an overview of what it's doing and who that organisation is? So this is just, again, a very quick example of a prompt, but then you could change that to, you know, acting as a grant writer, writing a grant application. Tell me in 100 words what the Smith family does. Now, I'm sure you're all thinking, oh, what if I put in my organisation? What's it going to tell me about my organisation? So you can do that now or later, but I just want to use the Smith family as a bit of an example, because what I want you to do now then is say, can you make this more concise and compelling? And then maybe someone can put up the difference they get. So what do you get the first time? And then acting as a grant writer or a marketing person for the Smith family, how do I make this more concise and compelling? Because remember, we're talking here about, as grant writers, you have an audience, you have grant makers that want to know about your organisation. You may only have Harriet, lots of applications now have a certain character, you know, you can only have so many characters in the application. So is this helpful to get more concise and compelling and simplified language, do you think?
I just put it in, Ruth, and I think it certainly is. It uses more compelling verbs like empower and equip and transform, and talks about poverty's grip. That's certainly what I got. And it has contracted what it originally had. Another interesting thing that you can do, often we're trying to bring things back, and we've got too many words and we're trying to make it shorter and more bang on. You can, if it actually doesn't give you enough, you can just put in the next prompt, continue. And if you just put in continue, it will keep giving you. So that's an interesting little one to know.
And I use the word another. Give me another one, or try again. Or I put wrong. That's not true. If it's really not true, because remember, you're training it, so don't tell it's not true if it's not. All right, but if you know that it's not true, or it didn't give you the right answer, you can say, tell me again. Yeah, and Jill has just said there's a little button as well that you can say regeneration, which just means do it again. Tell me again. But I use the word another a lot. I just say another, until I'm happy with what it's giving me. So how does everybody feel about that then? Sort of using it to wordsmith and get the right answer for you. Any questions at the moment before at the moment, we're still talking about what is already that it has available for you. We're not talking about actually giving it information at the moment, but we're going to get there. All right, so it looks like you're all having a play around. Is this fun? Having an actual go while we're talking? Tell me if you're enjoying this. All right, I've got one more. Okay, I've got one more prompt for you here before we talk about some very big risks. This is one that people ask me is, can I just put in, how do I do something? And I think Harriet alluded to earlier that, you know, if you're going to say, what do I put in a grant application about, you know, implementing a project or an evaluation, you've got to be very, very careful that you can do it and that it is giving you the right information for your organization. So here's your last prompt. Well, not your last one, but here's the one I've got for you, which is create a plan with actions required and a timetable for us to implement a mental health program. Now put that in and see how detailed and how what you think of its advice. Because I really, again, Harriet, want to ask you, what are the concerns around taking its advice when we're talking about things, programs like how to do a mental health program or how to do a program for people with disability or whatever it is that you do in your organization? I'm really, really like, whoa, whilst it looks like really great information, there are some major things that we need to think about, aren't there?
Absolutely. And I don't, you know, you can't expect ChatGPT to understand your resources unless you know, to some extent you can say, I have this officer, you know, and they will be working on the project. Please assign Jack, you know, Kate and Sue. You can do that. Interesting with that prompt is you can also ask for it in a table. You can say, please deliver this information to me in a table, and it will give it to you in tabular form. But yeah, look, it comes back to the thing that we've been talking about. It doesn't know your organization. It doesn't know your timing. Again, you can put in your timing. You could say, I will be delivering this project from May till October. So, you know, the more that you put in, the closer it's going to get. But unless you sat with that project team and really involved them in the initial process, and, you know, that's the same, that's the take ChatGPT out of the picture. When you're writing a grant, you've got to be able to sit with that project team and say, okay, if we get this money will come in February. Will we be ready to start in February, because there's an expectation that we will have spent it, you know, in the 12 months following? What will be the key milestones? At what point can we report back to the funder with those milestones? You know, all those sorts of things. And so that's where, if it comes back to you with this plan and timetable, it might give you that starting point. And, you know, often that can be fabulous. And it's just about taking that and saying, well, does that apply? Is that real life in my organization? Will it work?
Yeah. Yeah, look, those are some of my major concerns as well, is that we're just sort of going, oh, there's a good idea, you know, and really not thinking through how we've developed that idea with our participants, with our stakeholders, with our team. We haven't looked at some best practice around that. We've got to remember that it is very biased, and it's very good at sounding truthful, but it's not always truthful. In fact, sometimes it just completely makes things up. And that is what is happening very much at university as well, when students think that they can write assignments with this AI tool, and really some of it is just completely made up. So you need to truth check, and you need to make sure that you have consulted with your team and your resources, as Harriet said, and your community. And you really need to make sure that what it is giving you is ideas, but it is not telling you facts, and it is not telling you best practice always. So I do want to get to, Harriet, some of the problems and concerns that I think we should let everybody know about. And we've been sort of talking about this as we've been going through, but let's just pop through a few of them. bias and views that may not be your values and context. So you said that a little bit, Harriet, that it may not be your organizational values to do it in a certain way, or it might not be the context of your organization or your community. So we really need to be very careful with the bias that is coming across from chat. And also I've read that it's using a lot of text, and the algorithms is coming from text that it's scraped, as you said, with people with the loudest voices. So remember, there's a lot of people out there in the community that have loud voices, but that doesn't mean that's best practice. It doesn't mean it's your bias, your way of thinking about things. So we need to be very, very careful about what we use. There you go. The accuracy, it might not give you best practice or even something true. Consent. Now let's have a talk about consent and data ownership. Now this is public information. So what you take is been public because it's giving it to you. So it's lacking confidentiality, obviously, because it's taking it from what it's reading and it's giving it to you. So when you put information into chat, you are effectively handing over your information. You're effectively saying, I'm giving you this information that other people might now ask for. So Harriet, tell us what your perspectives are on, IP and data ownership, and what must we be really careful about when we're saying, we're putting in this text and saying, rehash this information for me. What should we be aware of?
It's out there. Once you put it into ChatGPT, yes, it totally becomes publicly available. I think one of the biggest things there is if you're writing, and we all love, a great case study, and often the organizations we work for, we're writing quite sensitive case studies. And so, if you're the writer, you write a draft, or you do the interview with the person. You sit down, you write your draft, you think, oh, that draft's a bit rubbish. I'll pop it into ChatGPT and ask them, or I just want it shorter, and I'll ask it to make it 200 words, not 500. And all this time, you haven't yet gone back to the person that you've interviewed to get their consent on that draft. You want to get it really looking schmick before you give it to them. But you've just got to be careful, because once you put that into ChatGPT, their personal story is there before they've given consent. And so I think with case studies particularly, obviously with your commercial information, a lot of it is available on the website, and if you're using that publicly available information, okay, but just be really careful with people information, because that consent and data ownership issue really is a big one.
Yeah, and Steph has just put in the chat, actually, the terms and conditions say, if you put anything in here, it's now, we've got access to it. You can't sort of say, oh, no, I didn't mean that. I want to take that back. You can't. Once it's in there. So be very, very careful, and Yaz may actually be able to tell us if there's any policy. You should have some policies around this, because again, if you're an employee and you're putting sensitive information into chat, you may be going against some of your organizational policy. So maybe Jazz can tell us in a little bit in a moment. But Jill, did you have something you wanted to say about that?
I was just going to say, can you ask Jazz to talk about that?
Jazz, are you there? Do you want to just...
Yeah. So recently I've been working with an organisation whose leaders used ChatGPT to write a performance management document. So uploaded staff information around a particular performance issue, and that's not okay. So it is really important, if you are using chat, to remember that if you're using it to write a client report, you're uploading that client information. And if you're using it to write sensitive content, where you would not want that content to be shared external to your organisation, to make sure that you are appropriately using it and not uploading names and specific information. So Oh, thanks on my eye makeup. I appreciate that. Yeah, but yeah. So anytime you're uploading information, you're basically opening your notebook and letting everyone else read what you've got in there. So you have to be very careful. A lot of organisations are putting in place AI text generator policies at the moment to help their people understand how to use ChatGPT and the like, because ultimately we are all using it. So I think it's just be careful. If you're not sure, check with your employer about how they want you to use it.
Put a 1 in the chat if you do already have a policy. I'm very interested to know if any organisations have got a policy. Relate does then. Anybody have a policy? Because ChatGPT is only one AI. Okay, there are many different ones. In fact, Jim said he was using a different one this morning. I've written down some alternatives. There's Google's Bard chatbot, there's Bing Chat, there's UChat, there's Write Sonic, Jasper. There's others. And I haven't used all of these, and I haven't checked them all out, but I know that there are a lot of these different AI, and there's going to be more coming on the market all the time. So if you are using any of these forms of AI, chatbots or machine learning kind of platforms, you do need to be very wary and tell your team this information. I'm going to ask JT to write a policy. Well, just check that it's good information, but hey, you can probably ask it for some ideas. Yeah. So I really want to, oh, excuse me. Sorry, getting so excited here. I want to really sort of land the conversation today with a couple of, things that Harriet and I were talking about, and thought, if we are having this conversation in the sector, what does the sector really need to be talking about? Not just how brilliant it is, because it is good and it can be helpful and it can be a little guide for you or give you some inspirational ideas, but we do need to make sure that everyone in the organization and the sector knows that there are things that we need to be talking about. And one of them is this ethics and privacy. Is it even ethical to be using AI to write grants? Should we be using it? And how should we be using it? And what are grant makers expecting from us as well? Do they want us to be using it? And what are grant makers, if we could put ourselves in their shoes, what are they thinking about organizations that use chat? Because I tell you what, I'm a lecturer here and I see a lot of assignments, and I'm already starting to be able to say, oh, that's chat, that looks like chat. So I'm starting to be able to see it, and so will grant makers. So is that what you, and it may or may not be, I mean, I'm making an assumption, but it looks like chat, and it's going to get people into trouble if you are just simply copying and pasting. Transparency, obviously, is that other really big question that we need to be asking ourselves. How are we using it and why? And do we need to talk to people about when we're using it? We don't want to be doing it and then sort of pretending we're not. So there is ways that you can reference chat nowadays, but again, it's just another Google, and we wouldn't just plagiarize Google to write an assignment, for instance, or write a grant. So it's really very important that you think about transparency. Quality control, that's what we've been talking about today, just making sure that it actually is truthful information, that it is not just spitting you out something fake that it isn't even there, it's just making it up. And accountability, making sure that what you write is what you can deliver. Exactly what Harriet was saying, is that you cannot write a grant application based off of what chat are telling you when it might not be best practice, or you might not be able to deliver it. So think through carefully what it's telling you and what you're using in your grant applications. What do you think, Harriet?
Yeah, I
absolutely. Key things you're talking about in your organisation, strategic grants?
I absolutely agree with all of that, Ruth. And I think one of the the interesting questions, and one of the questions we always see pop up on a grant application is tell us about the need for the project. And we always talk about providing as much evidence as you can about the need for the project. And if you pop, that question into ChatGPT, it might give you some generic sort of, comments about, yes, say it's a homelessness project. It might tell you how terrible homelessness is and, the domino social economic health effects of homelessness. And some of that, you might be able to take and use, but nothing is ever going to replace your organisation's understanding of homelessness in this particular community, your experience of having worked directly, your frontline people having worked directly, the primary data that you have collected in the last 2 years about the homelessness situation in that community. So, particularly when you're answering those questions, it's never going to be able to replace the experience and the knowledge that sits within your own organisation.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Thanks, Myles. Myles just answered a question which was great about how to reference chat, because we use SiteWrite here at QUT, so you can have a look and see how to reference certain things. But definitely we're telling our students that you must reference it if you're using it and relying on it. So we cannot, I think the other thing, Harriet, is that we can't sort of say, we can't put our head in the sand and say, this isn't happening. We have to embrace new technology. We just have to do it in a really wise way, right?
Absolutely. And, I use it. I think anyone who says they're not using it is potentially lying at this point, or not seeing it for what it can do. It's just, use with caution. As I said, it's your co-creator, it's your assistant, it's not your writer. And nothing is ever going to replace that, that true sense of emotion that comes through from someone who really understands, the project and what it's trying to do. And, funders are in the funding game because they want to deliver social outcomes, and they want you to be the vehicle to deliver those social outcomes. And as you say, Ruth, they're going to see pretty quickly through something that's entirely artificially generated. But if you are sitting there faced with that white piece of paper and you want to understand structure, you want to understand some general talking points that you can then take and nuance as it applies to your organisation, yes, that's the thing. If you want it to summarize, if you feel you've babbled about an answer and you've only got those precious 250 words and you desperately need to edit, try it, pop it in and see if it, edits it back down to what you want, but always check that you haven't lost meaning, that you haven't lost sense in that process. And as I say, really be careful with your prompts and try and give as much detail in your prompts as you can. I had an example I tried last night, tell me about how to train a puppy. I've got a 5-month-old crazy puppy. And, it sort of came up with some general material, but then I tried, and I've written it down here. You are a professional dog trainer. So give it straight up, give it some context. You're a professional dog trainer writing a how-to 1-page A4 flyer to a client with a 5-month-old staffy. Please write 10 dot points for that flyer about how to train their puppy, including house training, feeding, sleeping, and jumping. You can put all of that into your prompt and you'll get a much more refined answer. Take that answer, make sure you agree with it, that it's accurate, that it's not biased, that it makes sense within the context of your organisation. And yes, potentially then you've got something that's helpful, but put your own sense into it, put your own style into it and your own passion for the projects that you're writing about.
Yeah. No, great tips. Myles, thank you so much for all that you're sharing this morning. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, thanks, Ruth. Great session. Listen, I'll make a prediction. I think this is where it's going. In fact, it's already gone there. So the big consulting firms like McKinsey and the big legal, worldwide legal firms have done this. They bring ChatGPT or the equivalent in-house, and so it is only working on its specified documents and information, and their staff can ask questions from their trusted knowledge about how to do things. So it's already there in large Australian legal firms, and the big publishers, the big scientific publishers. So I think it's Elsevier now has a ChatGTP OpenAI approved app, which goes over 40 million scientific articles. So it interrogates that. So where I predict it'll go here, some of the big players in grant writing and grants such as Blackboard, etc., will train it and will use it on their documents. So a large charity that was making regular grants, be they to Commonwealth funders or to foundations, would train the AI on its previous grant applications and its own policies and its own ethics policies and own format of doing these things, and produce the stuff that way. Therefore, you overcome privacy and you detail it to your specifications and what has worked or not worked previously, and so you've got complete control. It's coming faster than we think. It's already there in legal firms, it's already there in accounting firms, and it's already there in the big consulting firms, and the publishers are rolling out the pay for apps already. So both really frightening and exciting times.
Yeah, no, fantastic, Myles. And if there's anyone that knows about the future and looks into the future, it's Myles. And I think that we really do need to embrace new technology always, but this is a very interesting technology that we need to think about for the sector and how we're using it wisely and legally and ethically. We must think through these issues and not just blindly using it, but also not putting our head in the sand and going, oh, I don't understand anything about that, so I'm not going to do it. We really do need to look into the issues, and it's the likes of Myles and other people that are helping the sector who are thinking this through and saying, how can we best embrace the technology in many different ways to enable us to get better social outcomes for our communities. So I think that's a really great place to leave us. I would like you to all put in the chat one thing that you're going to take away from today. I'm really interested to know what you got out of this conversation. What is it that you're going to go back and either do or think or share with your team? Maybe we can just share that with everybody online today, because Sam's going to write poetry, Myles. You see, someone else who's just learned that you can do that. Practice writing better prompts. Yes, thank you. Now, Harriet, you were just going to put up, can you add or your email you've put some prompts together that you'll send out to people, but I know that Jill also put a link to some prompts. Did you want to put your handout, Harriet, up?
I'm going to put in our email address.
Okay, so info@strategicgrants.com.au. If you would like a handout from Harriet about this with some prompts and some general information about grant writing, please email Harriet and she will send it to you.
Yeah, if everyone could, where are we now? It's Thursday, so if people could sort of send that by the end of the week, we'll do an email out next week to people who have sent their names. And can I leave you with, I think one of the quirkiest things you can do with it for those people with children is you can put in to create a personalised bedtime story for your child. And you can say, please include my child's pet, my child's favorite toy. And you can make my child be the hero, but ensure that the hero falls asleep at the end of the story.
Oh, that's going to help parents everywhere, Harriet.
I just love that.
I'm definitely going to try that one. Yeah, so no, look, I'm loving reading all what you've been thinking about during the last hour, what you're going to be going back and doing or sharing or discussing with your team. So I'm really happy and pleased that this session has prompted you to think about this technology and chat in particular. And thank you to everybody who's participated in the chat and shared information and ideas and perspectives. This is about supporting each other as a sector. And I just do want to say that we are going to have more tea and buns, and our next tea and buns is going to be about careers in the sector, probably. I'm just firming it up now. So if you would like to join us for more tea and buns, please send me an email and say what you'd like to discuss or what you'd like to learn. I'm always open to new ideas, and I want to know what you're thinking about and talking about in your organisation. So please feel free to email me. Thank you, everybody, from coming. I will be putting this up, the recording up, so that you can share it with your team if you'd like to in due course. But again, thank you, Harriet, for coming along. Always pleased to work with you and chat with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You have any more information, if you want everybody want more information about strategic grants, obviously just send Harriet an email and she'll be pleased to answer your questions. All right, so thanks everybody. Have a fantastic day. Fantastic, everybody. See you soon.